On the wild frontier, where the blazing sun scorches the red mountains and the darkness hides deadly secrets, one man carries within him something no one could ever imagine. Not a wound, not an ordinary legacy, but a secret sealed in his very flesh for decades. His name is Silas Ward, a tall, rugged man who has survived bar fights, gun duels, and near-death falls, yet nothing has ever brought him to his knees like this. What gnaws at him now is no mere affliction, but a foreign object, waiting for the day it will awaken. When the healer's scalpel cuts open his flesh, the truth is revealed: a silver cylinder, carved with strange symbols, burning hot as if alive. And from that moment, Silas's life is forever changed. Who placed it inside him as a child? Why did his father die to protect it? And why is the Eastern Mining Consortium, a ruthless underground power, willing to drench the West in blood to claim it? On a land where life and death are only a gunshot apart, Silas must choose: surrender it to survive, or keep it, and face a war that could consume everything. The sun rose over the harsh frontier of the Wild West, just peeking above the jagged red mountains, casting long streaks of light across the barren fields. Silas Ward, a man in his 30s, tall and broad-shouldered, stood before his weathered wooden cabin. One hand gripped the porch post, the other pressed hard against his back. For 3 days now, a strange pain had gnawed at him, starting between his shoulder blades and gradually forming into a hard lump, round as a river stone. Silas had been thrown from horses, cut by knives, and once nearly killed in a brawl at the Copper Ridge Saloon. Yet no wound had ever made him grimace like this. This was no ordinary injury. It felt alive, throbbing in rhythm with his heartbeat. In the cracked mirror above the washbasin, Silas caught a glimpse of his swollen, reddened skin, hot to the touch. He cursed under his breath, pulled on his threadbare shirt, and resolved to ride to Mercy Whitmore, the old healer who lived alone in the valley, famed for her skill with herbs and the scalpel. The ride through the narrow canyon, with wildflowers sprouting from the cracks in the stone, was usually a sight worth pausing for. But today, Silas saw nothing but pain. Each jolt of the horse sent a sharp, electric spasm through his back. He gritted his teeth, breathing hard, unease clawing at his chest. Mercy Whitmore was hanging laundry behind her house when Silas arrived. At the sight of his pale face, she dropped the basket immediately. "Let me see," she said curtly. When his shirt was removed, Mercy drew in a sharp breath. Before her was not merely a swelling, but something strange, rough, as if trying to push its way out. She didn't touch it, only hovered her hand close, as though afraid it might react. "How long?" she asked. 3 days. Getting worse," Silas ground out. Mercy's expression darkened, her voice laced with both curiosity and dread. "This isn't a normal wound. There's something under your skin. And it isn't new. It may have been inside you for years, perhaps since you were a child." A chill ran through Silas's spine. How could that be? How could something so monstrous remain hidden until now? Mercy gathered a scalpel, cloth, and a bottle of strong liquor. "If we don't take it out, you might die. But you must understand, this thing didn't end up in you by accident. Someone put it there, and sooner or later, it will want to get out." Seated in the old wooden chair, Silas gripped the armrests until the veins bulged on his hands. Mercy's sharp blade made the first incision, and his muffled scream tore through the quiet morning air. Blood flowed, the coppery stench filling his nostrils. But Mercy stayed steady, her scalpel scraped against something hard. Silas roared like a beast. Then, clink, a small metal object dropped into Mercy's palm. Both stared at it in the dim light, a silver cylinder, the length of a thumb, sealed at both ends with red wax, covered in strange inscriptions. Mercy whispered, "Good Lord, how long has this been inside you? Who would do this to a child?" Silas trembled as he took it. The metal was still warm, as if fresh from a forge. It carried a terrible weight, making his heart pound wildly. Just then, hoofbeats thundered outside. A rider in a black coat galloped straight toward Mercy's cabin. Her brow furrowed, her face turned pale. "That's Gideon Flint. He's been asking around about a man with a scar on his back. And now he's here." Silas clenched the cylinder tight. It suddenly felt as heavy as stone. How could this stranger possibly know the secret he had only just uncovered? The pounding of hooves thundered along the rocky dirt road, mingling with the howling wind of the prairie. Silas had barely managed to wrap bandages over the fresh incision when Mercy's wooden door burst open. A tall, gaunt man in a long black coat strode inside, his dust-caked boots striking the floorboards like hammer blows. He was lean, hollow-cheeked, but his eyes were sharp as blades. A bronze insignia glimmered on his chest beneath the lamplight. He was no drifter. This was a man who knew exactly why he had come. Silas Ward. His voice was deep, rasping, and carried an iron authority. At last, I've found you. Silas didn't answer. His hand clenched tighter around the silver cylinder. Blood seeped down his arm from the stitched wound, but he didn't bother to wipe it away. The only thing he felt was the danger radiating from this stranger. Mercy stepped in front of Silas, forcing calm into her voice. Who are you? Why do you storm into my house? The stranger's lips curled into a cold smile. My name is Gideon Flint. I don't care who you are. I came only to reclaim what belongs to me. His gaze fixed on Silas's fist. At once, the air in the small cabin grew heavy as lead. Silas gripped the cylinder until the veins on his forearm bulged. If this thing is yours, why has it been buried in my back for 23 years? Gideon stepped closer, fury flickering in his eyes. Because your father betrayed us. He was one of ours. And he paid with his life. What you hold is the last proof of it. And it must return to the Order. Mercy's breath caught, her face turning pale. The Order? Don't tell me you mean the Eastern Mining Consortium. The name cut the air like a knife. Silas had heard of them, a secret syndicate that controlled land, mines, and men's lives across the western frontier. But never had he imagined his father was tied to them. Slowly, Gideon drew from his coat a gleaming silver revolver, its barrel leveled on Silas. Hand it over, Ward, unless you want to die like your father. The room fell deathly still. The oil lamp sputtered, shadows creeping along the cracks of the cabin walls. Silas took a long breath, then quickly tucked the cylinder into the bloody bandages at his side. Lifting his head, his eyes burned with defiance. If it's worth that much, then I sure as hell won't hand it to the likes of you. Not until I know the truth. The silence shattered with the scream of a horse outside, followed by a desperate shout. Flint, they've found us. A bullet tore through the window, shattering the frosted glass. Mercy screamed as Silas dragged her to the ground. Gideon staggered back, his face hardening. Outside, fiery torches pierced the misty rain, stretching into a long line of riders. At least 10 horsemen had encircled the cabin. Rifle barrels gleamed in the dark. Mercy trembled, whispering, "Dear Lord, the consortium's men." Silas forced himself up, glaring at Gideon. You led them here? Gideon's jaw tightened, but the gun in his hand never lowered. You don't understand, Ward. What's inside you is the key to the richest silver mine in the territories. They'll kill anyone who stands in their way. From outside came a furious roar. Ward, give it up, or we'll burn this house to ashes. Silas glanced down at the cylinder hidden in his bandages. It pulsed with heat, as though it wanted to burst into light. In that moment, he knew, his life, his father's death, and the fate of the West itself were bound to the terrible secret sealed within that silver tube. And now, he had to choose. Surrender it and live, or keep it, and face a war that could consume everything. Gideon's voice cracked like a whip, his eyes burning red. You have no choice, Ward. Tonight, the secret inside you will decide the fate of the entire West. The night wind roared, carrying the acrid stench of torch smoke and gunpowder. Outside the wooden cabin, 10 consortium riders spread into a crescent, rifles leveled at the door. Horses neighed and snorted, mingling with the metallic clicks of cocked weapons. Silas pressed himself flat to the floor, heart pounding. In his chest was not only ragged breath, but also the trembling of the secret bound beneath the bandages on his back, the strange silver cylinder. It burned hotter with each beat, as though it recognized the enemies prowling outside. Mercy clutched her scalpel with shaking hands. We can't hold this house, she whispered. One volley and it'll come crashing down. Gideon Flint stood in the middle of the room, his black coat hanging to the floor. The firelight from outside flickered in his eyes. turning them into glowing embers. His revolver still pointed at Silas. But his voice dropped. Urgent. Ward, listen to me. They're not just here to kill you. They want the cylinder. And if it falls into their hands, this whole territory will drown in blood. Silas narrowed his eyes. So that makes you the good guy? Gideon smirked, his smile devoid of warmth. Good or bad doesn't matter. What matters is I understand what you're carrying. And I'm the only one who can keep you alive tonight. Outside, a deep voice bellowed. Ward, last chance. Hand it over, and we'll spare you and the old woman. Refuse, and by morning, nothing but ashes will remain. The threat was punctuated by a hail of gunfire. Windows shattered, shards of glass and splinters of wood exploding across the room. Silas and Mercy ducked low as dust and smoke filled the cabin. Silas cursed. We have to get out, now. He lunged for a wooden cabinet, yanking free his father's old Winchester. His hands shook, but his eyes blazed with resolve. He loaded a round, the click-clack echoing with grim finality. Mercy's face went pale. You can't fight 10 riders alone. It's suicide. Silas shot her a fierce glance, his gray eyes burning. I already lost my family once. I'm not about to lose my life just to keep their secret buried. At that moment, Gideon suddenly lowered his gun, his voice hard as steel. Ward, if you want to live, listen. Behind this house is a hidden tunnel. Your father built it. I'm the only one who still remembers the entrance. If you want that thing out of here, we'll have to work together. Silas froze. A tunnel? His father had hinted at a hidden escape in his final days, but never said where. Gritting his teeth, sweat rolling down his face, Silas pressed a hand to the burning bandages where the cylinder radiated searing heat. Outside, hooves pounded and men shouted as they prepared to storm in. Another blast rocked the cabin, the door shuddering violently. Mercy screamed, "If you don't decide, they'll be inside any second." Silas clenched his jaw. As much as he hated Gideon, he knew one truth. Alone, he couldn't break the consortium's trap. He roared, "Show me the way." Gideon smirked, motioning for them to crouch. He kicked aside a ragged carpet in the corner, revealing a wooden hatch with a recessed handle. Beneath it yawned a pit of darkness, foul air rising up. Before they could descend, a bullet ripped through the roof, smashing into the table. Flaming shards scattered, fire licked across the room. Mercy screamed, coughing in the thick smoke. They're burning the house. Silas shoved Mercy down the hatch first, then leapt after her. Gideon was last, slamming the hatch shut. Above, fire crackled and roared, red light seeping through the cracks. The tunnel was pitch black, the air damp and suffocating. Only Gideon's small oil lamp cast a dim glow on the clay walls. The scent of wet earth clung to every breath. The thunder of hooves, the shouts of men, and the crackle of burning wood echoed faintly overhead. Gideon whispered, striding fast in the dark. Ward, listen carefully. That cylinder holds an encrypted map. It leads to a silver mine no one knows of, 10 times richer than any the consortium controls. Your father was its keeper, and because he refused to give it up, he died. You are his heir, whether you know it or not. Silas staggered, the words striking like lightning. His father, the man he thought was only a poor farmer, had carried a secret that could topple empires. Before he could process it, a loud crash echoed at the far end of the tunnel. Dirt rained down. Someone was digging in from the outside. The consortium had found the tunnel. Mercy clutched Silas's arm, terrified. They're blocking us in. The cylinder beneath his bandages suddenly glowed, a faint warmth pulsing through his body. Silas felt it urging him, demanding he choose. Keep running. Turn back, or stand and fight. Gideon hissed, eyes blazing. Ward, tonight, you give it to me, or we all die here in this pit. Silas clenched his fist, the cylinder's light bleeding through the bandages like a ghostly lantern in the dark. And in that moment, he knew. This was no longer just his secret. It was the power that would decide the fate of the entire frontier. The patter of falling dirt and stones at the far end of the tunnel rang out like a death drum. Clods of damp earth rained down, dust clouding the air, mingled with the clang of pickaxes and shovels. The consortium had found the tunnel. Death was crawling closer, slow but inevitable. Silas Ward pressed his back against the earthen wall, clutching his Winchester, cold sweat beading on his skin despite the chill of the underground air. Mercy stood close by, her eyes brimming with fear though she fought to remain steady. And Gideon Flint, the man in the black coat, fixed his blade-like gaze on Silas, pressing him to the wall without moving a muscle. "You understand now, Ward?" Gideon growled, each word heavy as stone. "Time's up. Give me the cylinder. I know how to open it. If you don't, you, me, and the old woman die here, buried alive." Silas gritted his teeth, instinctively pressing a hand to the bandages at his back. Beneath the cloth, the silver cylinder pulsed with heat, like a second heartbeat within his body. It made his head swim. Part of him wanted to throw it away to save himself, yet he knew if it fell into the wrong hands, the consequences would be unthinkable. "You said it's a map to a silver mine," Silas choked out, voice thick with pain and rage. "So why hide it inside me? Why did my father have to die for it?" Gideon's lips curled, a dry laugh echoing in the darkness. "Your father, Thomas Ward, was one of the founders of the Eastern Mining Consortium. But he betrayed them. He stole the map, hid it, and severed all ties. The Order never forgives traitors. And he chose to leave it buried in the flesh of his own son." Silas staggered at the revelation. Memories of his father flooded back, a quiet man, eyes always shadowed with sorrow. Never once had he spoken of his past. Now the truth was unveiled, painting him as both hero and traitor. "You are the heir, Ward," Gideon pressed on, his voice stabbing like needles. "Not the heir to a ruined farm, but to a secret that could reshape the entire West. But you can't hold it. Only I can unlock it." Mercy broke in, her voice trembling yet fierce. "And if he gives it to you? What then? How are you any different from the consortium? Aren't you just another wolf in sheep's clothing?" Gideon's eyes flared with anger, though he restrained himself. "I'm no saint, but I know whose hands it belongs in. If the consortium takes it, they'll turn this land into hell itself. Me, at least I have reason to keep the balance." Before Silas could respond, an explosion rocked the tunnel's end. Dirt and rocks sprayed, firelight and shouting voices bursting through. Figures emerged, rifles in hand. Mercy screamed, "They're here." Silas raised his Winchester and fired. The shot cracked like thunder, a muzzle flash splitting the dark. A scream echoed as the first man fell. But at once, gunfire answered, bullets ripping through the air and slamming into the tunnel walls. Earth showered down, the ceiling trembling. In the chaos, Gideon lunged, seizing Silas's arm. They struggled, blood soaking through the bandages at Silas's back. Silas roared, wrenching free. "I won't give it to anyone." The cylinder beneath the cloth flared, glowing pale blue, casting ghostly light over Silas's face, transforming him into a living statue of bronze. Gideon froze, eyes wide with shock. "It's reacting. God, it's reacting to you." Mercy's eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "Silas, you have to choose now. Trust him, or trust yourself." The enemy's voices rang closer. "Ward, don't be a fool. Hand it over and we'll let you live." But in their growls, Silas heard what he knew to be true: lies. The consortium never spared anyone. If he surrendered, they would kill him to erase the trail. He drew a deep breath, raising the Winchester, the barrel gleaming in the lamplight. "If this is my father's legacy, then I alone will decide its fate." He pulled the trigger. The bullet tore through the chest of the first man to breach the tunnel. A scream echoed, the others faltering in shock. Gideon panted, his gaze shifting from fury to something else: respect. "You're mad, Ward. But maybe only a madman can keep this secret." Mercy tugged at Silas's arm. "We have to retreat, deeper in. There's an exit that leads to the hilltop. If we wait, they'll trap us here." The three bolted into the dark, footsteps pounding the clay floor. Behind them, the consortium's shouts rose, bullets peppering the walls, collapsing chunks of earth and choking dust. As Silas ran, the blue light from the cylinder flared brighter, guiding them through the twisting black corridors. Yet with it came dread. This was no mere map. It held a power beyond human grasp. At the final bend, Gideon halted, breath ragged. "Ward, listen. Once we're out, they won't stop. They'll chase us to the ends of the earth. Decide now. Give it to me." Let me take it far away, or be ready for a war that never ends." Silas stopped, sweat streaming down his face, the blue glow dancing across his features. In his mind, his father's voice echoed from the past, whispered by the fire. "Son, some secrets are worth more than life itself. But remember, only you must choose. No one else." Behind them, the consortium's torches blazed, shouts closing in. Ahead, the exit glimmered just steps away. Silas turned to Gideon, raising the Winchester, fire in his eyes. "I've already chosen. Flint, this cylinder won't fall into your hands. Or anyone's." As the words left his lips, the exit burst open, blasting all three into the night. The wind howled across the hillside, carrying the scent of freedom and the iron stench of blood yet to come. Behind them, the consortium roared, flooding after. That night, Silas Ward's choice was sealed. But the price of it still lay ahead, perhaps the lives of them all. The wind howled across the desolate hillside. Silver-gray moonlight spilled over the barren ground, illuminating three figures who had just escaped the tunnel: Silas, Mercy, and Gideon. Their breaths came hard and fast. Sweat mingled with blood. Behind them, torches flared and hoofbeats thundered like hell itself pouring out of the earth. Silas pressed a hand to the ground, feeling the silver cylinder burning hotter than ever beneath the bandages on his back. Its pale blue light seeped out, mingling with the moonlight, making him the very center of the night. Mercy trembled, her aged eyes gazing at the young man with both fear and hope. Gideon let out a harsh laugh, his eyes gleaming with equal parts greed and awe. "Tonight your name will be carved into history, Ward," he murmured, "either as the man who saved the territory, or the fool who buried its treasure." Before Silas could answer, gunfire split the night. Bullets tore through the air, striking the ground around them. The consortium had encircled the hillside. 10 riders in black cloaks, rifles gleaming, advanced step by step like a pack of wolves. Their leader, a bearded man with a scar slashing across his face, bellowed, "Ward, don't waste your life. Hand over the cylinder, and we'll spare you a way out." Silas rose to his full height, his eyes cold as steel. He shouted back, his voice echoing across the hill, "You will never have it." The only reply was cruel laughter. Horses shrieked, weapons clicked, death was closing in. Gideon drew his revolver, crouching behind a boulder, teeth clenched. "Ward, if you don't want to die tonight, you must let me open it. I know how, trust me." Silas looked at him, then at Mercy. For a moment, time itself seemed to slow. He remembered his father's faint words by the fire. "Some secrets, my son, you must guard until you're strong enough to turn them into light for others." And suddenly, Silas understood. The cylinder was not a treasure for himself, nor a weapon for any faction. It was a test, to see what men would choose, power or truth. He drew a deep breath and ripped away the bandages. The silver cylinder blazed, blue light flooding the hillside. The consortium opened fire, but every bullet that struck the halo of light veered off, slamming harmlessly into the earth as if swept aside by an unseen hand. The riders shrieked in panic. Silas lifted the cylinder high. For the first time, it opened, no key, no blood required. Inside were not maps to hidden treasure as Gideon had claimed, but ancient parchments detailing the locations of silver veins, mineral deposits, and fresh water sources across the West. Not wealth for a single man, but resources that could feed thousands, saving towns from famine and war. Gideon stared, stunned. "My God, it's not gold or silver, it's life itself." Mercy wept openly. The consortium broke into chaos. Some fled, others fired wildly. Silas roared, his voice rolling across the battlefield. "My father died to protect this, not for you to plunder, but for the generations to come. If you want blood, take mine, but this truth will never die." He fired the Winchester, each shot cracking like thunder. Gideon, strangely, fought at his side, cutting down riders who charged through the smoke. The battle lasted only minutes, but it burned like a lifetime compressed into fire and steel. At last, the survivors fled, leaving the hillside strewn with blood and smoke. Silas dropped to his knees, exhausted, the cylinder still glowing in his grasp. Mercy laid a trembling hand on his shoulder, whispering, You've made your choice, Silas. Not money, not power, but life. He raised his eyes to the moon, his heart heavy yet unburdened. His father had not died in vain. And he, Silas Ward, was no longer just a fugitive. He was the one chosen to bear the burden of opening a new future. Ket, in the fading glow of the cylinder, Silas knelt on the smoke-stained hillside. The consortium was gone, the riders dispersed, only he, Mercy, and Gideon remained, staring at one another in the night wind. He realized then that his father had left him not only a secret, but a legacy, the burden of choice. And Silas had chosen to keep the truth for the community, chosen to sacrifice personal gain for the sake of others' lives. If we place that story in today's world, we find ourselves standing on a different kind of hillside. It may be in the workplace, within our families, or in the heart of society itself. Each of us carries a cylinder, our knowledge, our talents, our convictions, and there are always consortia surrounding us, tempting us to sell it cheaply for safety or short-term gain. We must choose to remain silent and conform, or to stand tall and share what is right, even when the cost is high. The deeper meaning is this: true strength is not measured by how much we accumulate for ourselves, but by our courage to turn what we have into value for others. When an employee dares to stand up for fairness among colleagues, when a father or mother chooses honesty so their children can follow, when a citizen raises their voice for the good of the community, they're doing what Silas did, keeping the light alive instead of letting darkness consume it. And more importantly, the story reminds us that even in our darkest moments, we can still find the blue light of the cylinder deep within, our conscience, our integrity, our compassion. If we hold on to it, we not only save ourselves but also open a path of life for those around us. So, when faced with choices in our everyday lives, remember, sometimes the decision is not between winning and losing, but between leaving behind selfishness or leaving behind a legacy. Like Silas Ward, we too can be keepers of the light, not with gunfire, but with courage, kindness, and responsibility.